Hey, we got a new truck. But that's not really what I want to talk to you about right now. What I'd like to talk to you about is, you've probably noticed, we've had a little bit of turnover. So we've had a little bit of turnover in our business, and I think that that's probably natural, and I want to encourage you guys to not worry if there's turnover, especially as you're new. As you grow and you become an older business, hopefully you'll have less turnover, and our ultimate goal is to not have turnover at all, to at least minimize that to where we have the least amount of turnover possible. When we first made our first hires, one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to staff up just to make sure that we can move the ball forward. I know you've heard me say that in the past, but we don't always make the best choices. We don't always pick the best people. A lot of people get stuck in this part of their business because they're so scared of making a mistake they do nothing, and that inaction actually holds their business back more than if they made the wrong hire. Don't hear me in any part of this say that these people are bad people. They're not bad people, but just because they're great people doesn't mean they're a good fit for our business either. I think that there's multiple reasons that a person can be a bad fit for your business. Maybe they don't share the same cultural values. We are energetic, and maybe people can't match our energy level. That can be an issue. If 5 people are running and 1 person standing and sauntering to the job, then that creates a cultural imbalance. So the first person that we hired was Larry, and unfortunately Larry's not with us. So Larry was a great person. I had multiple compliments on how great a person he was and how easy he was to talk to, and a lot of customers really enjoyed him, but really struggled to sell to people and connect with people to actually convert those compliments into sales. So we had to make the tough decision financially that we couldn't continue to go down that path. Had nothing to do with the character of the person. It had nothing to do with how much we liked him. It just wasn't working financially for the company, and we have to make those tough decisions. So as business owners, we have to remember this one key thing that I heard. I think Dave Ramsey said it, but he said that we don't change until the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. And so we don't necessarily like to rotate out our employees. Sometimes we don't like to make those changes even though they're necessary, because it's really uncomfortable to do so. And I would encourage you, if you're struggling with somebody, put the time in, but know when to cut the cord. Because if you try and try and try and you just keep getting the same result, probably it's not going to work out. And one of the other things Dave Ramsey says is hire slow and fire fast, because if you're frustrated with a certain team member, you're not getting along, chances are they're equally as frustrated. So it's not a good situation for either one of us. It's just one of us needs to step up and admit it. The next person that we had was Tyler. Now Tyler is infamous for putting the trailer in the ditch. Maybe that was an early indicator. Some might say that was a clue. But like I said, I really like to try and work through some of that stuff. I don't like to cut somebody loose because of one event. Sure, it was a problem, but it didn't injure anything. The equipment wasn't really harmed. We just lost about half a day's worth of work. So we put a lot of time into Tyler, and unfortunately that didn't work. We just really struggled to get him up to task and match our hustle. At the end of the day, we just really struggled to get him to be able to perform on his own. And that was one of those people that we both kind of realized mutually that it wasn't working out. He didn't get fired, he quit, but it was at the verge of where one of us needed to make that admission and realize that this wasn't working out, and then Tyler was the first one to step up and say, this isn't a good fit for me, I'm gonna move on, and we fully supported him in that decision. So Tyler's a great person, like Tyler, wish him the best, but unfortunately he didn't work out. Roland didn't last very long. I think he was maybe a 2-weeker. He was here long enough to be featured in the infamous trailer ditch video alongside of Tyler. So yeah, he didn't last very long, and it just was not a good fit for him. Him and Tyler were both friends, and again, he was the one that manned up and said, hey, this isn't the right job for me, and decided to move along, and I think that was maybe a 2-week stint. So again, we wish RJ Roland the best, and he's gone. So then we hired Barron, and I'll be honest with you, that was more my fault than anything. Barron was somebody that I hired to run a crew for us, and it just didn't work out from the very beginning. I had another person sit in on the interview with me, and they said, well, you know, he's the best thing you've got that's come through the door. Some of these hires have been like that. They've been, you know, the best candidate out of the ones that applied, or the only one that applied that had any skill. And so I kind of took him on his word that he had the skill, and when he showed up, he just, I guess maybe his definition of good fence and mine maybe had a mismatch there. You know, so I kind of hired him out of desperation despite my better judgment, knowing that I didn't think it was going to be a good long-term fit, but that was my fault. I never should have hired him. My gut was telling me, it was screaming at me that this wasn't a good fit, and I hired him anyhow. And so really that one's 100% on me. And I think that's how we get a lot of ourselves into these messes is, you know, we don't have many candidates apply for the job, so we hire the first warm body that comes along. And that can be helpful. It can help us, you know, get some stuff done in the meantime, but in the long term, it can be detrimental. And so when we make those mistakes again, realizing that we've made a mistake, that whoever it is that we've put on doesn't fit for whatever reason, maybe they don't have the skills, maybe it's a cultural fit, whatever it is, admitting that and moving on. And doing that as quickly as possible. I've been guilty of it myself, being in a situation where we hired somebody and feeling like if we didn't have them, we don't know how we'd get the work done. You know, our organization is dependent upon that one person, and if they weren't there, nobody's there to do it. And so we're like, well, even though they're not a good fit for our company, we keep them and we allow them to stay in the organization, when the best thing we can do is to start coming up with a plan to replace them so that we can find the right fit sooner. Because we really hold ourselves back when we do that, because then we have somebody that we know is not a good fit, but they're what we have, and so we don't hire the right person for the job, and we don't start looking for the right person for the job. And overall, that just holds the whole organization back rather than letting us move forward. Where if we ask that person to leave, we would be forced to make the change. And while that's really uncomfortable, it could actually lead to best results long term. And a lot of business owners get stuck in that area where they're what we have, and we're so scared that we're not going to find somebody to replace them that we're just going to put up with bad behavior, or we're going to put up with bad performance or a bad cultural fit, or whatever the problems that we're having are. We got stuck in a situation like that back in Wyoming. We had a salesman that just flat wasn't working out, and we tried to train and tried to train and tried to train, and no matter what we did, we just got the same result and the same bad behavior. And finally, we put together a plan and said, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We can't put up with this. It's hurting the whole organization. And I think we actually lost some other really good key people as a result of this, because it created such conflict in that one office. We should have made the change a long time ago. I should have made the change a year ago, insisted that we make the change, but we were so comfortable that we didn't want to go over here because that seemed more uncomfortable, when all we did was impair our whole organization because of one person. Goes back to that thing. We want to work with stallions, not donkeys. Like, donkeys can be good hard workers, so we want to work with thoroughbreds rather than mutts. You know, nobody's running the Kentucky Derby with a mutt horse. I don't know what the term for a mutt horse is. It's mixing dogs and horses, but you get the idea. I cannot stress that when you recognize somebody's not a fit, making that change really quickly is super important. I don't care how important you think they are. If they're behaving badly, they will only hurt your organization if you allow them to stay. Make the change and don't let these people stay if they're not working out. You're not doing them a favor, and you're not doing yourself a favor. So here's my 6 tips for hiring and retaining great team members. Number 1, hire somebody. Somebody's better than nobody in almost every case, because when you're needing help, even somebody that's only doing half the work that you need them to do is going to be better than not having somebody to get 0 work done. That gives you the advantage of time to go out and find better people, and that's exactly what's happened now. Now we have a great team. We've got Zach, who is pretty new but seems to be killing it. We still have Austin. We have Brian, who I absolutely love, and Clay, who I love. I mean, they're just great guys. They're the kind of people that I would want to be around, and I wish I could have found them to begin with, because I could have saved myself some trouble, but it took me time to find them. And I'm going to need some more people, and it's going to take me time to find those. Another key thing that we did is we hired Jeremy and Amber. Now, that's a husband and wife team. I didn't initially think that we were going to have Amber come work for us, but they're such a powerhouse couple when it comes to just organization and everything. They're the type of people that really take ownership of everything they do. And that probably is going to be one of the biggest keys to moving this thing forward of anything that I've done so far. They weren't cheap. I gave them what they asked for, but man, are they getting stuff done. And it's making a huge difference in the level of stress on my wife, myself, the crew. Will be more organized. Our customers already enjoy it because they're getting better communication, and that's what's going to make this company go forward. Tip number 2, hire slow, fire fast when you have the opportunity. Understanding that in today's market, you need to be somewhat swift, because if they are good, they'll move on very quickly. So you need to have a process that deals with that. The more you get away from the professional people, the more they're going to be expecting to hire fast. Now, a professional person, maybe an accountant or something like that, they're going to be more expectant to have that process take lower. So tailor your process to the type of person you're trying to attract. Number 3, make sure that you don't fire so fast that you don't give them an opportunity to correct it. Sometimes you can train through some of the behaviors, or train through lack of knowledge, or whatever. I always like to give grace, and we do every possible thing that we can to make sure we're giving it an opportunity to change the behavior or get up to speed with whatever task they're supposed to be completing. But when that doesn't work, we get into number 4, and that is don't be afraid to fire. A lot of people get stuck thinking that they can't find somebody new, and that will actually hold your company back worse. So when it's time to cut ways and admit that it's not working out, make sure that you do that, because there's more horror stories from people that got tied to a bad team member too long than anything else, and they can actually make other people in your company leave because they spread like a cancer, especially if it's a bad attitude or something like that. You can't train through bad attitudes. So when it's time to cut the cord, they're probably frustrated too. Set them free to do something else and find the work that they really love. Number 5, make sure you're paying well enough to get the people you want. If you're gonna pay $10 an hour, you're probably not gonna attract the best people. So be ready for the people that are gonna match the pay scale that you have. If you don't have benefits, you need to look at getting benefits. That's a big deal. Most people don't want to go work for a company long term that doesn't have any benefits. Start with what you can offer. Those benefits can include things as simple as paid time off or paid holidays. That doesn't cost you a whole ton, but you've got to get to where you offer health insurance and those things, because that's what real long-lasting team members want. Tip number 6. Make sure they fit your culture. Hire for culture, because culture matters. Whether you like it or not, your company has a culture, and people will fit or they will not fit based on what your company culture is. And you need to foster, as a leader, you need to foster the culture that you want in your company and hire for that culture. I want the kind of culture where grace is given. People aren't hard and we just scream and yell at each other. That's not at all the kind of culture I want to foster. I like people that are high energy, like to joke, get my sarcasm. If you don't like to joke, we're probably not going to get along great. So hire for culture. Don't forget to check out some of the other videos that we have if you're struggling with employee problems, and maybe even stop calling them employees, start referring to them as team members. But if you're having human resource issues, check out some of our other videos, maybe right over here. And until next time, we hope you have a good dang day.